we do have English Spanish interpretation is provided for you. Please check the interpretation icon, the globe icon, at the bottom right of your screen and select the channel you prefer. The meeting is recorded and the session is also streamed on YouTube. You are free to ask questions or comment via chat, please. We will have time for discussion after the second panel session. We advise you to keep your microphone muted and please keep your camera off if your connection is not stable.
Mariana, sorry if I may interrupt. Sorry, your voice is fading out, and the speaker is the interpreter is also not able to hear you clearly. So
really?
maybe, yeah.
So I start now. Let's try again. We advise you to keep your microphone muted and please keep your camera off.
Not good.
Your connection.
No, it's not good, no. Mariana. Sorry, maybe you should hold your microphone or take off your whole thing altogether. I don't know. Let's try.
Yeah, I will do like this.
That's good.
We advise you to keep your microphone muted and please keep your camera off if your connection is not stable. It will help in stabilizing your connection.
It's maybe you can work without the headphones. Maybe probably that's how it will work best. Yeah, sorry.
Presentations will be shared after the event. Is it better? Okay. Presentations will be shared after the event, and we will send you an evaluation form to receive your feedback on what you thought about the event and suggestions on the topics we can cover in the future. And now I think we are ready to start our program. ICA's think tank ICETT consists of 16 large cooperatives worldwide. And today's webinar is part of the ICA Congress and is organized with ILO, which I already now want to express gratitude. In today's event, our special focus is on child labor, as you know. This year was declared by the UN as the International Year on Elimination of Child Labor. The world marks the International Day of Child Labor every third. It will be this coming Saturday.
Sorry, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. There's a lot of interruption in your voice.
What about Joseph and all? Because I heard someone to say that they cannot hear me.
We can hear you, but the thing is, there's a lot of interruption in your voice. It's going up and down, and we can't make out what you're saying.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. I already took the headphones off, and I'm now having microphone on my computer, and that is on.
Yeah, now we can hear you clearly, so you can go on, please.
Okay. So the world marks the International Day on Elimination of Child Labor every 12th June, which will be this coming Saturday. In this regard, we organized this event in collaboration with the International Labour Organization, ILO, to explore, raise awareness, and share recommendations on how cooperatives can enhance the fight against child labor in the communities they are operating in and in their value chains. This topic is more important today than ever before, as the world is recovering from COVID-19, as we all know, and how it has affected the whole world, and the children have not been exempted. We will have here two panels. The first panel will share some practical case studies and best practices on how cooperatives tackle child labor. The second panel from ILO will share with us practical tools and recommendations how cooperatives can accelerate the progress in elimination of child labor. I take the opportunity already here to thank our excellent speakers. It is a pleasure to have you all here on board. And now I have the honor to welcome our first speaker, ICA General Director Poland, to give the opening remarks. Please, Uno.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Mariana, and warm welcome to all of you from wherever you come from in the world. Thank you for joining this ICETT seminar. So ICETT is a think tank. It is supposed to think. It has the mission to think and to come up with themes, some of which are difficult ones, like this one today. It's a think tank among large cooperatives and cooperative groups from different parts of the world, and active in various sectors. And it was established in 2018 by the ICA. It began its activities in 2019 by defining its main themes. And last year, it really began its activities in earnest. So I'm very happy that this webinar today is being organized in collaboration with the ILO on the occasion of the International Day on the Elimination of Child Labor. The standards of defining child labor have been clearly established by the ILO. It is work performed by children that deprive them of their potential, their dignity, and that is harmful to physical and mental development. And its worst forms include slavery, sexual exploitation, or illicit activities. The ILO Recommendation 193 on the promotion of cooperatives from 2002 mentions the two references to child labor. One is the 1998 Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work, which includes the abolition of child labor, and the other one is the 1999 Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention. The recommendation 193 was approved almost unanimously by the international community, by which we mean not only the states, but also the employers and the trade unions from around the world. And it was also approved by the ICA itself, including the ILO standards on child labor that are in it. So it is since 2002 that the cooperative movement organized internationally around the ICA has formally recognized the need to eliminate child labor. Then in 2009, the ICA collaborated with the ILO in publishing a report called Cooperating Out of Child Labor, which is very good. I recommend you to read it. In 2018, the ICA General Assembly approved a declaration on decent work and against harassment, in which it commits itself to work towards the end of child labor. Now, the end of child labor will not be an easy task. According to the ILO's estimates, there are still 152 million children in the world that are victims of it. But however hard it will be to eliminate child labor, we have to work in this direction. Now, it is clear, according to the 7th cooperative principle of concern for community, that cooperatives in their immediate surrounding communities should act against child labor and in favor of children's education, which many cooperatives in the world are actually doing, as the ICA ILO report I just mentioned illustrates very, very well. But why and how should cooperatives do it also along their value chains, namely uphill and downhill among their providers and their clients? Well, first of all, we should realize to what extent value chains and supply chains have become predominant in the world today compared to a few decades ago. In 2014, the IMF director, Christine Lagarde, said we are now in a world of integrated supply chains where more than half of the total manufactured imports and more than 70% of total service imports are intermediate goods and services. At the same time, with this growing surge in the importance of value chains, we have seen a big increase in the literature over the last 10 years about the social bottom line in global value chains, including decent work and including also, of course, child labor. So the pattern of development of the globalized economy does require that enterprises in general look at this issue. But why should cooperatives in particular look at this issue? And what are the ingredients that we have in the standards of the cooperative business model, as they are enshrined in the ICA statement on the cooperative identity, justifying that cooperatives should look at it specifically? Well, first, we should look at the very concept of community, expressed in the 7th cooperative principle of concern for community. Decades ago, a community of a cooperative was viewed as the territorial extension from where you could see the steeple or the minaret or the stupa of your village. But with the evolution of the globalized world, this concept probably needs to be enlarged and maybe to encompass also the stakeholders, all the stakeholders in the cooperative, including its providers and clients along the value chains. Another element in the cooperative business model having to do with value chains is the sixth cooperative principle of cooperation among cooperatives. Indeed, although the value chains in which cooperatives are involved often do not only include cooperatives, the sixth principle provides a strong instrument through which value chains among cooperatives can be created and reinforced, in particular, although not only through fair trade. Value chains, in particular in fair trade, can constitute a life-changing difference for producers, their families, and their immediate communities, and in particular when the producers at the beginning of the chain are involved in local cooperatives. This can materialize by the possibility of sending your children to school and give them a decent education, but also by the fact that the local cooperative very often contributes to local communities' sustainable development, including in terms of health, in terms of diet, environment, and so on, which are fundamental to the growth of the child. The ILO IC report I mentioned before provides a lot of examples in this regard. Now, many cooperatives have done a lot to enhance human rights, and in particular children's rights in value chains, but they have not always used it as a commercial argument by telling the story, in spite of the fact that customers are increasingly interested about the stories behind the goods or services they buy, and the fact that they want to make sure increasingly that what they buy is ethically produced, has been ethically produced. So the theme of value chains, as well as that of telling the cooperative story and be proud of the cooperative model, are among the themes that will be discussed at the 33rd World Cooperative Congress that will be held in Seoul and online on between the 1st and 3rd of December on the overarching theme of deepening our cooperative identity. It will be a big gathering 9 years after the previous Congress, and it will examine the cooperative identity from a wide array of aspects. We encourage all of you to join the Congress in person or in Seoul or online. This webinar is one of the events that we have branded towards the World Cooperative Congress, as you can see behind me here. And so that what will be exchanged today will also feed into the Congress itself.
Thank you, Bruno. Is it okay if you stop here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last word. I hope that we have a good webinar, and I also hope that it constitutes material to help the ICA to partner with the ILO on the issue of labor standards, including child labor, in this incoming global recovery period. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno, for a very inspiring address. And now the next speaker, Merav Neev, serves as legal counselor and cooperative coordinator for the cooperative movement. And she is also the representative in different cooperative bodies. In addition to counseling and regulatory advocacy for the people's movement, Merav coordinates and cooperates in the development and enhancement of training and cooperative capacity building tools, and promotes and takes part in active cooperative research. Merav is a member of the ICETT Working Group on Human Rights and will now highlight the background of the theme of our webinar. I will now give the floor to Merav, please.
Thank you, Mariana. Good afternoon to everybody. In these next few minutes, I will try to arrange the theme for us all. Because when we talk about human rights and value chains, last year the ICETT conducted a webinar during the Human Rights Day on December on how cooperatives practice, protect, and promote human rights in value chains. This year, when the United Nations has declared 2021 the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor, the ICETT aims to evaluate how cooperatives tackle child labor in their operations and value chains and conduct awareness-raising campaigns on the elimination of child labor, and hold discussions with cooperatives to exchange ideas, share best practices, and practical recommendations to enhance and accelerate the progress in the fight against child labor. The first of which you're experiencing and sharing with us today, and thank you for that. Now, the topic of child labor is not new to cooperatives, as Bruno mentioned before, as several studies have been conducted by ILO and other international organizations on how cooperatives could contribute towards enhancing the elimination of child labor. However, little has been done as a follow-up to harness the untapped potential of cooperatives In this regard, ICETT found it necessary to explore further the role that cooperatives could play in the fight against child labor and suggest practical steps that can be put in practice. But first, we start with the framework and the definitions that will sort of focus us towards what's important and what's feasible. So first of all, the international legal framework includes two fundamental conventions. The first one of them is the Minimum Age Convention, that's number 138, and the other one is the Worst Forms of Child Labor Convention, it's 182. In accordance with these conventions, child labor reflects the engagement of children in prohibited work and activities, that is, work and activities by children to be eliminated as socially and morally undesirable. Because child labor is work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, and their dignity, which is harmful to physical and mental development. We must pay attention to the fact that not all work that children undertake is bad for them or would qualify as work to be eliminated under the ILO conventions. Because age-appropriate tasks that are of lower risk and do not interfere with a child's schooling and right to leisure time can and perhaps even should be a normal part of growing up. The ILO Convention on the Worst Form of Child Labor states that the term child shall apply to all persons under the age of 18. This is also a definition used in the UN Convention on the Human Rights of the Child. When we talk about the worst forms of child labor, these take many different forms, and the elimination of the worst forms of child labor as defined by Article 3 of the ILO Convention 182 is a priority. And these include all forms of slavery or practices similar to slavery, including forced or compulsory recruitment of children for use in armed conflicts, the use, procuring, or offering of a child for prostitution, for the production of pornography or for performances, the use, procuring, or offering of a child for illicit activities, in particular for the production and trafficking of drugs, and work which by its nature or circumstances in which it is carried out is likely to harm the health, safety, or morals of children. Other than the worst forms of child labor, we also have to take into consideration hazardous child labor. It means work in dangerous or unhealthy conditions that could result in a child being killed or injured and or made ill as a consequence of poor safety and health standards and working arrangements. When we talk about child labor, the term does not encompass all economic activities performed by children under the age of 18 years. Millions of children legitimately undertake work, paid or unpaid, that is appropriate for their age and their level of maturity. By doing so, they learn to take responsibility, gain skills, and add to their families and their own well-being and income. Therefore, child labor does not include activities such as helping out after school is over and schoolwork has been done. Work could include light household or garden chores, childcare, or other light work. All these are part of the enabling capacities and education for children, in which cooperatives especially are more interested in promoting. What is at stake? The international community has identified the elimination of child labor as a fundamental human right at work. It has renewed its commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals to eliminate all forms of child labor by 2025. According to the recent ILO figures, there are 152 million children still in child labor worldwide. It is a deep-rooted problem and needs a holistic and multi-stakeholder approach to solve. Child labor has been seen as a consequence and as a cause of poverty and underdevelopment. Children subject to extreme forms of exploitation with little or no basic education are likely to grow into illiterate adults, physically and mentally stunted, who have virtually no prospect of breaking out of the trap of poverty into which they were born or contributing to the development of society. On a positive note, there has been a decline in children's numbers engaged in child labor in recent years due to significant efforts and commitment by various stakeholders to advance the fight against child labor. With over 152 million children subject to child labor globally, COVID-19 pandemic has worsened conditions for the most vulnerable children and put millions more at risk. If we say that child labor is largely a result of poverty and a byproduct of many factors, including social norms, lack of decent work opportunities for adults and adolescents, migration, and emergencies, then the pandemic poses very real risks of backtracking the improvements made in the road to elimination of child labor. Positive trends may falter and child labor may worsen, especially in places where it has remained resistant to change. These risks require urgent action to prevent and mitigate the tolls the pandemic takes on children and their families. The pandemic has increased economic insecurity and profoundly disrupted supply chains. When these and other factors result in losses in household income, expectations that children contribute financially can intensify. More children could be forced into exploitative and hazardous jobs. What is cooperatives' role in the elimination of child labor? Child labor is neither ethical nor socially responsible, and it challenges the cooperative value for caring for others and conflicts with the ambitions of building sustainable enterprises. Cooperatives have always respected the cooperative principles of concern for community and education, training, and information, which both have their eyes towards the future, not only today. When a company uses child labor in order to gain profit today, it is not thinking about the future. Cooperatives have a strong presence in economic sectors where child labor is found, and they could play a significant role in its elimination. For instance, 70% of children engaged in child labor are in the agricultural sector, and cooperatives work mainly in this sector. Therefore, one of the significant contributions that cooperatives can make to eliminating child labor is improving their members' livelihoods and those in the communities they serve. Cooperatives are economically and socially significant actors in many countries around the world, and they can be effective partners for the dissemination of information, good practice, as well as for advocacy, so that the elimination of child labor remain high both on the entrepreneurial and political agenda. Ending child labor is not only the right thing to do, but also makes good business sense. Trends in the business world show that enterprises are increasingly judged on their behavior in areas such as health and safety, environmental protection, human rights, human resource management practices, corporate governance, community development, consumer protection, labor protection, supplier relations, business ethics, and stakeholder rights. Acting against child labor and communicating about activities that combat child labor can improve economic success while promoting the cooperative form of business.
Maybe 1 minute, Merav.
Okay. Thank you. So what are the objectives of today's events? First, we mark the International Day for the Elimination of Child Labor. we raise awareness. We will discuss how cooperatives act. How do they improve livelihoods of their members and people in the communities? How do they serve in order to eliminate and denote the worst forms of child labor? We will discuss best strategies that cooperatives could engage in to enhance community mobilization and awareness-raising campaigns. And we will explore practical tools that cooperatives and other organizations could adopt to enhance and accelerate the fight against child labor. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mariana.
Thank you, Mera, for your clear contribution and background information. It will help us follow the previous presentations. Okay, and now our program continues with the first panel session. We will now hear two case studies from cooperatives from Ghana and from Argentina on how they tackle the issue of child labor. Our first speaker is Mr. Patrick Ovusu. He's a professional cocoa farmer and a community developer. He has a Master's of Science degree in Economics at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. He is manager from Asunafo Cocoa Farmers Union, which is a registered farmer cooperative union in Ghana since 2014. Asunafo Cocoa Farmers Union was just the most formalized and best fair trade certified farmer cooperative union, best fair trade certified small producer organization in Ghana twice, in 2012 and 2020. They are a collectively working group with their partners to improve the living income for their members. I want to hand the floor now to Patrick. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to speak on how cooperatives tackled child labor. And I would like to share our practical experience on how we've been able to deal with child labor issues within the last 10 years that we've been in existence. So my presentation will highlight the field background of Asunafo Union. We'll also talk about some best practices with respect to awareness creation and skills development, and also we'll highlight some few things on child labor monitoring and remediation system, which has just been adopted since 2020, and also give some few recommendations to, everybody here. So let's move to the next slide. Asunafo Farmer Union was formed in 2010. We finally had our cooperative registered. We became cooperative registered in May 2011. In 2012, we also became fair trade certified. And currently, our membership is 9,541, of which 55% are male and 45 are female. We have about 1,812 youth membership strength as of today, and we are working in 67 primary communities across the Asunafo North municipality. Please, let's move on. Currently, Asunafo is working with some key partners with respect to, addressing issues of child labor. One of them is Mondelez International through the Cocoa Light program. We've been working with them since 2008, even before the formation of the cooperative, and they have remained one of our biggest partners since the formation of Asunafo Union. And in 2019, Tony's Chocoloni also joined the train, and we've been also working with them. And as I mentioned, Fair Trade International and Fair Trade Africa has also been a key partner in addressing issues of child labor, and also international cocoa initiatives has also been playing a very critical role. And in Ghana here, we've been working with Cocoa Board through CHED and other government agencies like Department of Social Welfare, Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and Labor Department. These are some of the key institutions that we've been working with when it comes to issues of child labor. So some of the best practices in respect to awareness creation. Asunafo Union, with the support of our key partners, we've been able to establish Community Child Protection Committee, which are working actively in all the 67 communities. So far, we've also been able to establish a district-level child protection committee, which also supports the community-level child protection committee in order to deliver on their mandate. Also, we've been able to build a regular stakeholder engagement, which enable all stakeholders to come together to share experience with respect to awareness creation and others in addressing issues of child labor, which is also helping us a lot. Aside that, the union has taken steps to sign agreement with local and community radio stations like Success FM and Amansan Radio. We've been working with them for the past 5 years to create more awareness, because initially we were basing in the communities, but we decided to tackle the whole population. So we were using the local radio stations to do that. And also with the implementation of child labor monitoring and remediation system, members are now cooperating and participating in terms of addressing child labor. So this is also one of the good things that we want to share. And also, we've been able to establish Children Parliament through the support of Fair Trade Africa through their D4A program. That's a Dignity for All program, which is being implemented since 2017. And we've been able to start a Children's Parliament, which enables children to share their experiences and also talk about issues that affect them and also raise more awareness. So far, we've also created some safe school ambassadors. We've established some safe school ambassadors, and mainly we've used teachers and also some school children who will be ambassadors, who will be able to talk about issues of child labor and how we can address them. Also, through the support of Cocoa Life program, through the, a program being implemented by Child Rights International, we've been able to establish a drama group across 3 schools. These groups are people, they are using the school children, train them how they can use drama to tell their story about child abuse and its effects, so that people will become aware and also stop using them on such activities. Aside that, on the issue of vocational and skill development, we realize that farmers are normally engaged in child labor because of, poverty or economic condition. So in order to address that, we've been supported by our key partner, Mondelez International, and through that support, we've been able to provide support to some youth, identifiable youth, who have been given some kind of apprenticeship training, people becoming mason. We train a lot in mason, carpenters, seamstress, and hairdressers. And this has enabled these few youth to at least provide some kind of economic support to their families. Aside that, we also supported and trained 270 youth in hand pollination. We realized that after, some of them after junior high school and senior high school education, most of them don't continue to, they don't further their education. So in order to contribute something to the farm development, we decided to give them training through the support of CHED. And currently, these guys are working and also supporting our farmers in order to increase productivity and also improve their living condition. Aside that, we also trained and supported about 678 women in bread making. And also, we also trained 870 women in soap making. The soap making, we are talking about the local soap where we use the cocoa husk to make some local soaps. And this is very, it's a business, which is very moving. And most of these trainees are using the resources and also the income that they are generating from these activities to take care of their families. Also, we also supported the youth, about 598 youth, and trained them in bread, bees making. And this is also creating some kind of, self-employed, job to these youths. Also, we also supported and trained about 188 women in vegetable farming, because we realized that, a SUNAFO is good not only for cocoa, but also good for vegetable activities. So we partner MUFA to support and train these women, and they have been provided with some tools and equipment to work with. Currently, in order to address issues of, farmers not able to manage their farms very well and resulting to maybe using their kids to do these kind of activities, we've set up a youth service brigade. So far, we have about 168 youth who are currently working and supporting our farmers to prune their farm and also to provide other spraying services for them at a lesser cost. And this is also helping us to address issues of child labor. Also, on the best practices of child labor monitoring and remediation system, let me give you some few highlights how the system works. In the system, we have what we call a community facilitator. And that the community facilitator, his role is to raise awareness on child labor issues, also provide remediation activities, and also monitor the progress and impact of the remediation action. And when we started the implementation in 2020, we want to compare before the implementation and after the implementation. Before the implementation, child labor cases were based on mere predictions. But through this system, we are able to identify cases because the community facilitators are supposed to visit farms, visit families, visit households, and also to speak to children and also to know their issues and also provide, remediation activities, with them. Also, with this one, it's more focused on, household, whereby the normal activities that we're doing in the past was more of community awareness creation. And this one, there's also a defined tool. And with the old system, there wasn't any defined tool that we're using. Currently, with this system that we have adopted, there is also, we provide remediation activity based on cases that we identify. But in the past, remediation activities were provided based on perception and based on general overview of child labor activities within the community. Let's continue. So these are some of the cases that we identified through the implementation of child labor monitoring and remediation systems. We realize that children are engaged in economic activities during school hours. So in order to respond to that, we've also provided some livelihood training programs, which I've already mentioned. And we don't only end there, we also provide education support. It's a system that was adopted in 2015, whereby so far about 954 students have been supported with cash in order to pay their fees and also and in order to manage their school activities very well. And also we have issue whereby children walking long distance to school without any supervision. In order to address that, we've been able to provide schools for about 26 communities. We provided school building ranging from 3 classroom blocks to 6 classroom blocks. We also provided mechanized boreholes through the support of our biggest partner, that's Mondelez International Cocoa Life, and other partners as well. And currently, there were also cases whereby children were not using PPEs when maybe following their parents to farm during holidays. So in order to do that, we are trying to build more awareness creation. We are creating more awareness on that. Also, children helping parents on farm during school days. This one too, we are addressing it through, awareness creation, which is still ongoing. Also, inadequate school materials causing school dropouts. So in order to respond to that, so far, this year alone, we distributed 70,000 exercise books, which has been
Now I think we lost Patrick, or at least I did. What about you, others?
Yeah, we cannot be able to hear Patrick. I think he has a connection problem.
I haven't had his presentation, so I don't know if this was the last slide or where exactly during his presentation. Now the slide, but is it, Joseph, you are changing the slides?
Well, there are two more slides. There are 2 more slides, Mariana, including the recommendations. Yep.
Thank you, Santos. I just wonder if we wait for Patrick to come back, or we continue with.
Maybe we can go to the next speaker, and then if Patrick comes back, we see if he can finish.
Yes, let's do so. So participants, okay, now Patrick is back.
So let me conclude. Let me conclude.
Yes, please conclude.
So let's go to the next slide. So these are some of the pictorial evidence. So on the recommendation side, let's go to the recommendation. On the recommendation side, we are recommending that the Child Protection Oversight Committee should be strengthened, especially at the regional and the municipal level. We realize that these committees are not, they don't get any kind of support when these committees are put up, except the cooperative that provides some little support to them. So we believe that the district assembly should incorporate, their budget into their medium-term plans and also provide them the needed support in order to work effectively. Also, the resources allocated for social welfare department, which is very key in addressing issues of child labor, should be enhanced, because we believe that they normally help us in the remediation cases. They normally help in referral cases, but without them being resourced, they cannot be able to do that. And also, child labor policy should be enforced in the mining and the timber industry by the government, because we have realized that the timber and the mining industry has also been one of the two industries that are also creating child labor issues. So we believe that the mining companies and other timber industries should be, monitored. They should have a policy in their plan whereby they can also contribute in addressing and also, enhancing, reducing child labor. And also, we believe that the cooperative system and certification should be strengthened. For instance, we believe that when cooperative systems are more strengthened, they will become, the members are more conscious. They don't want to engage in activities of child labor because of this certification, because they are aware that if they remain certified, they will earn premium, and that premium will help them to improve their living condition and other things. So we believe that the cooperative system should be more strengthened, and more importantly, more resources should be extended to cooperative organizations, because most of our resources come from premium. So if partners, international organizations are providing support to cooperative organizations, we'll be able to provide interventions to cover a lot of farmers and also cover a lot of children, and also address issues of child labor. So in conclusion, the last slide. Yeah, in conclusion, we believe that CMR, a child labor monitoring and remediation system, is also a good model, and is something that should be adopted and should be expanded to cover all communities. So far, we are doing it in almost 40 communities, whilst about 20-something communities are not benefiting because of the cost involved. So if you are able to get support, we'll be able to expand it to cover a lot of communities. And we are hoping that in the next 5 years, we should be able to work together with all partners, Mondelez International, Cocoa Life, Tony's, Fair Trade, and the government of Ghana, to be able to address issues of child labor to the barest minimum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. It was fascinating to learn from your work and your concrete actions and recommendations. And participants, dear participants, if you have questions to Patrick or Merav, I have realized that you have put already questions to the chat box. Please, Merav and Patrick, you may answer those questions there, or then we may have time for questions and answers later on. But now we will move to our second speaker, who is Mario Gonzalez, president of La Riojana Cooperativa from Argentina. And he is currently chairman of the board of the directors of La Riojana Cooperativa, vice president of Mutual Federada Salud, president of Fundación Humberto Volando, and vice president of Fundación Fortalecer, and also president of the Fair Trade Association. He has dedicated much of his life to the promotion and execution of productive agricultural and wine projects linked to associatism and mutualism, in the later case in the area of solidarity health. In 2019, he was recognized with the title Doctor Honoris Causa by the National University of Chile-Chito. I will pass now the floor to you. Please, Mario, the floor is yours.
Sí, muy buenos días a todos. Gracias por permitirnos estar junto a ustedes y poderles contar alguna experiencia nuestra. Vamos a tratar de ser breve, pero lo importante es que podamos hoy hablar de nuestros niños, hablar de cómo estamos trabajando para evitar que haya trabajo infantil. Nuestra cooperativa fue fundada en 1940, está radicada en Chilecito, provincia de La Rioja, Argentina. Contamos con 360 asociados, tenemos 270 empleados directos en la empresa, y de la cooperativa, directa o indirectamente, viven 2.000 familias en cada uno de los quehaceres que tiene cada uno. Nos dedicamos a la producción vitivinícola y olivícola. elaboramos vino, jugo de uva, aceite de oliva, vendemos en el mercado interno y también en el mercado externo, especialmente en Europa y Estados Unidos. Algo que nos permitió mucho trabajar sobre el tema del cuidado de los chicos, de que no haya trabajo infantil, fue la certificación Fair Trade, la norma Fair Trade de comercio justo, que en el año 2006 la certificamos como trabajo contratado en principio, y en el 2013 para pequeños productores. O sea que todos nuestros productores están certificados con la norma de Fair Trade. Tuvimos siempre una firme convicción, digamos, de no admitir el trabajo infantil, tanto en la cooperativa como en nuestros asociados. Por eso es que siempre, digamos, se definió políticas específicas para aplicar a todos sus miembros. No admitimos contratos de menores en ningún tipo de actividad. No permitimos el ingreso de empleados de cosecha, especialmente en los periodos, digamos, de la vendimia y de la zafra de la aceituna, salvo, digamos, que pueden estar cerca si los padres tienen un contacto y un control directo de esos niños, porque viene mucha gente de otras comunidades, digamos, a cosechar. Periódicamente estamos haciendo auditorías para asegurarnos de que no existan desvíos en la normativa nacional que establece que no puede haber en nuestra legislación, en nuestras leyes, trabajadores menores de 18 años en nuestra cooperativa. La cooperativa, digamos, en la próxima cuenta, digamos, con un programa de responsabilidad social, lo que es la capacitación y la formación. Se facilita el acceso a la educación secundaria, terciaria, universitaria y de posgrado de los asociados, los hijos de asociados y de los empleados de la cooperativa, que por cuestiones, digamos, geográficas o presupuestarias o sociales no pueden acceder a la educación. Para eso hemos instaurado becas de tal forma de que todos tengan la misma oportunidad, con montos de dinero o especies, digamos, que le vamos acercando a nuestros niños, a nuestros jóvenes, digamos, para su formación. Siempre y cuando, digamos, se le hace un seguimiento de que acrediten los méritos y que realmente le den utilidades a las becas para formarse como profesionales para el día de mañana. Estas becas permiten formar y capacitación de recursos de las áreas normalmente que estén relacionadas con la actividad de la cooperativa. Hablemos de lo que es enología, ingeniería agronómica, o lo que es materias que tienen que ver, digamos, con el quehacer de nuestra cooperativa. Hemos construido con los fondos de comercio justo, por eso nos hemos dedicado a lo que es la educación y lo que es la salud de nuestra población y de nuestros niños. Construimos un colegio agrotécnico donde residen pequeños y medianos productores en esa zona. El objeto es que los hijos de esa gente, de esas comunidades, puedan acceder a la educación preuniversitaria. La prioridad la tienen los chicos del lugar y los hijos de los empleados y de los asociados, y después está abierto para toda la comunidad. Hoy en día cuenta con 550 alumnos. Nuestra cooperativa le donó a la Universidad Nacional de Chilecito esa escuela construida por los fondos de comercio justo, y la verdad que la universidad le ha dado un contenido de enseñanza muy buenos realmente. Egresan como técnicos agrónomos, tienen posibilidad de hacer prácticas dentro de nuestra cooperativa o de las fincas de los asociados, digamos, de los predios agrícolas, para ir formándose como profesionales o seguir estudiando, digamos, en la misma universidad que tienen las carreras de agronomía, de enología, entre otras. Con esto estamos buscando que no haya el éxodo, que haya posibilidades de trabajo en cada uno de los lugares donde estamos. Hemos avanzado también en el tema de la salud, que tanto está en boga hoy en día este problema de la pandemia, pero bueno, ya en el 2018 empezamos a construir un centro de salud que tiene previsto atender en principio la madre y el niño desde su concepción hasta el nacimiento del chico, y tiene 7 consultorios, digamos, adaptados para esa temática. También está previsto, digamos, la telemedicina para podernos contactar con otros centros asistenciales, para podernos contactar con el mismo mundo realmente, en donde realmente puedan tener acceso, digamos, a una mejor atención médica nuestra gente. Hoy en día estamos en el 70% de la construcción de este lugar. Estamos trabajando con la universidad, estamos trabajando con una mutual que somos parte, una mutual de salud, de tal forma de conformar un equipo que realmente le dé sustentabilidad al funcionamiento de este centro de salud. Digamos, también está previsto que hagamos la parte de investigación de enfermedades endémicas, de tal manera de que haya realmente la posibilidad de detectar problemas, digamos, en la salud de nuestros niños y de nuestros jóvenes. Para lo que le agrego, realmente hemos trabajado sobre, en la cooperativa, de hacer realmente una mesa de trabajo de los jóvenes para irlos preparando para el futuro, para la toma de decisiones dentro de la cooperativa. Estamos incorporando mujeres al consejo de administración y también, digamos, un consejo de jóvenes para poder realmente prepararlos para el futuro de nuestra empresa. La verdad que estamos muy contentos de poder trabajar de esta manera, de poder comunicarnos con ustedes y ponernos a disposición para cualquier pregunta y para cualquier intercambio que podemos hacer, porque he visto muy buenos ejemplos con los que se ha hablado anteriormente en mi palabra. Así que bueno, les agradezco y estoy a disposición de ustedes.
Thank you, Mario, for your inputs and your experiences in Argentina, and also thank you for keeping the time. And now we will move to our third speaker, and I have the pleasure to invite Lilian Maina. Lilian comes from Fairtrade Africa, where she works as social and compliance manager. She has been working there since 2015. And at the moment, she is broadly coordinating workers' rights, inclusion, and child protection components for Fairtrade certified producers in Africa. As one of the gender leads at Fairtrade Africa, she has been participating actively also to gender work, for example, training and supporting Women's School of Leadership project in Ethiopia. I will give now the floor to Lilian. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone from Nairobi, Chile, Nairobi. I hope that we are all doing well. I'm glad to be part of this forum, just to have an opportunity to discuss the plight of child labor and just to wrap our heads around this issue. So I'm having a challenge with I will go to the introduction, which has been mentioned by previous speakers. Mirav gave us the statistics around child labor, whereby we have 152 million children engaging in child labor globally. But a statistic that we cannot ignore is the large percentage of them being in the agricultural sector. Certainly, we cannot ignore this. Again, COVID-19 has come in and it has set back some of the efforts that had been implemented towards the prevention of child labor and also in the elimination of child labor. And this has mainly been because children have not been attending schools, so they are easily available to work. We have also had some parents or guardians losing their sources of income. So most or some of the children have had to engage in economic activities to contribute or to supplement to the family income. Again, we have had duty bearers putting their attention in the issue of the pandemic and how to contain this pandemic. So little attention has been given to the plight of child labor. And some of these factors have contributed to the issue of child labor. I will now outline the requirements that are within the fair trade standards with regard to the protection of children and the prevention of child labor. At this point, I would like to define the types of producers that are fair trade certified. We have two types of producers within the fair trade system. We have the small producer organizations and we have the hired labor setups. The small producer organizations are comprised of small farmers that are producing a particular commodity coming together to form a cooperative. And that cooperative is the one that becomes fair trade certified. On the other hand, we have plantations, and these are usually private companies that become fair trade certified either as a single entity or where we have branches of that plantations, then they become certified as a multi-estate. So we have two types of producers within the fair trade system. The small producer organizations, who are cooperatives in this case, and the hired labor setups. For much of this presentation, I am going to focus on the cooperatives because that's what we are talking about, but I'll slightly mention requirements for the hired labor setups, especially with regard to education. So the key requirements around child labor for the small producer organization is that one, the cooperatives or the farmers are not allowed to employ children under the age of 15 or under the age, the minimum age that has been set by the government of that country, whichever is higher. So if a country has set the minimum age of employment to be above the age of 15, then the cooperatives within that country that are fair trade certified go with the higher minimum age that has been set by their government. Again, for those who are employed between the ages of 15 and 18, they should not be engaged in dangerous and exploitative work. And this means that they should not be engaged in work that affects their school going if they're still attending school, or affects their health and safety, or even affects their morals. And of course, this includes the worst forms of child labor and hazardous work. Again, children can contribute to family work or family labor, but under strict conditions. One, they should not miss school because they were helping their parents to harvest coffee and other such things. When they are working, they must be supervised by their parents or guardians. They cannot work for long hours, and of course, they should not engage in dangerous or exploitative work. And the work that they engage in should be appropriate for their age and their physical development. If within a producer organization, there is a risk of child labor, the producer organization or the cooperative is required to set internal control, internal management systems. Actually, this is a bare minimum or a basic requirement for the cooperatives. This internal control or management systems would be policies such as no child labor policies or employment procedures. And one of the common employment procedures is to have potential workers or employees showing their national identification cards, and this shows that they are of age to then be employed. Then, if there is an incident of child labor within a producer organization, the cooperative is required to engage in remediation. And the form of remediation that they engage in should be within the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, whereby they should consider the best interest of that child, their right to survive, because again, we acknowledge that there are child-headed households, and to ensure that the voice of that child is heard and respected. And if child labor incidences occur within an organization, it triggers the fair trade systems procedure, whereby we then engage protection agencies, because as a system, we are not a child protection agency. So we have to engage other stakeholders to come in and support the producer organization in remediation. Then we have some standard requirements around education, and these have greatly contributed in prevention of child labor. And one requirement for the small producer organizations is that if there is no school within that community, they need to either work by themselves, or they can engage the local authorities and other partners such as NGOs to build schools, or if it is not possible to build schools, then they need to provide safe transportation to the nearest schools to ensure that their children are receiving education, and not only education, it has to be quality education. Then where we have workers migrating into certain communities to work, there need to be temporary schooling arrangements set for the children of those workers. And this helps to prevent those children from, tagging along their parents to go and work, because then that's how they would engage in child labor. Then some requirements are for the hired labor plantations. They are required to ensure that the children of all permanent workers are accessing primary education. And in addition to that, they must set measures to continuously and regularly improve the education that the children of these workers receive. And in this case, it's not only for the permanent workers, but it also includes the migrants, temporary and seasonal workers. Then something else I would like to highlight around education is the impact or the contribution of fair trade premium funds in enabling the children of farmers, workers, and their communities to stay in school. Actually, this has been noted in the Journal of Cleaner Production. They did a study on private sustainability standards and child schooling in the African coffee sector, and they put their focus in Uganda and Ethiopia. But this is just a representation of what has happened in the 32 countries in which fair trade certified producers are in Africa. One thing that comes out from this study is that in communities whereby we have fair trade certified producers, the rates were high for both school enrollments and school efficiency for both primary and secondary levels. So we cannot ignore the impact of premium funds in enabling education of children and preventing child labor. Then beyond the requirements of the standards, we as an organization have engaged our producers in various projects, and some of these projects have had child labor components and interventions. One that has already been mentioned by Mr. Owusu from Asunafo North, and I was very happy to see him speak because you heard from him, is the Dignity for All project. This is a project that has been funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Finland, and some interventions have been implemented in Asunafo North, Suhum, and Ayensuano district, whereby there have been various activities to lobby, to campaign, to create awareness, to build the capacity of even duty bearers, and to assist them and to engage them in child protection. We have colleagues in that region, such as Anthony Bright Kwakuga and other other colleagues who are working with Mr. Owusu and other farmers to promote the rights of the children. They have trained teachers on safe school creation, and this has helped to reduce school-based violence. And this helps the children to see schools as safe environments for them to attend school, and just to reduce the incidences of corporal punishment, which sometimes prevents children from attending school. They have also engaged local authorities to build their capacity on approaches to child protection, and this has helped to strengthen the child protection structures. Then you have seen from one of the pictures that Mr. Owusu shared that they have done a lot of lobbying and community awareness, just to create awareness in the community of what child labor is, why is child labor not a good thing, and also to create awareness around the rights of children. Then in addition to the Dignity for All project, we have had the Recover Africa project. This has been implemented in 6 countries in the various regions of Africa. The key or the general focus has been on relief and resilience in production and employment of workers, but we have also had some interventions that may have indirectly contributed to the protection of children and the prevention of child labor. But now we are at the stage of conducting analysis of the interventions, and hopefully soon we can be able to share some of these reports even externally. Then we have the notable youth inclusive community-based monitoring and remediation system. This is a methodology that was developed in 2017, which requires the producers together with their communities. And within those communities, it requires the young people who are both the children and the youth to be part of monitoring and response to identification of child labor and also suggesting remediation measures. This has been implemented in various countries, in Madagascar, Madagascar's vanilla production, in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, in the Kingdom of Eswatini, among the fair trade certified cane sugar producers. And we are soon hoping to implement the same methodology in Uganda's coffee sector. Then beyond that, we have had discussions and forms of advocacy to duty bearers and with other partners and stakeholders around the issue of child labor. Our aspiration as Fair Trade Africa is to see our producers being more proactive instead of being reactive towards the issue of child labor. This is already happening because of the producers that have implemented the youth inclusive methodology. But we want to, our aspiration is to see all producers protecting children and not engaging in child labor because it is the right thing to do, not because the standard requires them to do that. And we are making positive steps towards that. Our recommendations are to the duty bearers that they really need to give attention to this plight of child labor, to have clear national action plans and to actually implement them, because it is one thing to have national action plans on child labor and the protection of children, but it's another thing to implement these plans. Then they also need to to fund some of these plans and to set clear structures for remediation and the protection of children. And these structures should be very easy, such that if even a citizen identifies a case of child labor, then they know what to do. They know what step to take to protect that child and to remediate them. Then we have a call to all supply chain and value chain actors to partner in addressing the root causes of child labor, because child labor is a very complex issue. I believe that none of the organizations in this forum can do this by themselves. So we need to take a multi-stakeholder approach. And again, with the increasing demand for human rights and environmental due diligence, we need to make the requirements of the HRADD very practical and applicable to the farmers and workers, because again, children's rights are part of the human rights. Then again, it's a call to especially traders and other actors along supply chains and value chains to pay living wages and living incomes to our farmers and workers. This is a way of dignifying their work, and it also reduces the risk of child labor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lilian. Thank you for your contribution to our team. We are now a bit behind the schedule, but I now invite Todor Ivanov from Riojana Coop, the Secretary General of Riojana Coop. Riojana Coop is a European community of consumer cooperatives, and it's also a sectoral organization of Cooperatives Europe. Please, Todor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mariana. I trust my connection is stable enough. I would like to share my screen with you to put up the slides I have prepared. Just bear with me for a couple of seconds. All right, so thank you very much. I would like to extend my warm appreciation to the International Cooperative Alliance for involving me in today's event, and specifically to you, Mariana, for your personal invitation and very good collaboration that we have. Of course, my name is Todor Ivanov, Secretary General of the European Consumer Cooperative Movement. And it is I'm very excited to be with you today and to hear very inspiring stories throughout the wider cooperative movement on how we can establish ethical value chains and eradicate child labor. My aim for the next 8 minutes is to actually present not so much a case study, but inform you of a EU Commission initiative, which is in the pipeline for driving overall sustainability in global supply chains. With that, if time permits, I will give you some examples, concrete examples of best practices among consumer co-ops, and then end with some conclusions. So, continuing with what is the Code of Conduct? Well, it is an initiative, as I said, of the European Union Commission, and the aim is to boost ambitious EU corporate sustainability performance and reporting in the food chain. So it is a code of conduct which is limited to the food chains. We're not talking about electronics or any other type of commodity, but food and raw materials, obviously for food. The idea is to champion sustainability in global supply chains and, of course, tackle human rights issues, child labor, exploitation, and not only, because we're talking about social responsibility or social sustainability, but also environment and economic. We cannot underestimate the importance of economic sustainability as well. How does the European Commission want to do this? Well, by having companies voluntarily commit and design tangible and measurable actions for shaping a food environment which makes the healthy and sustainable choice for the consumer the easier choice. The idea of the code is that it's going to list some aspirational objectives and targets, which frames the territory, frames the rules in a way, and a list of indicative actions which companies may or may not follow. They're free to design their own actions, of course. I cannot overemphasize the fact that it is a voluntary code, of course. automatically some people are going to think, well, we know that voluntary codes do not work. But the biggest, I think, takeaway, it's still being developed, of course, the codes should be signed soon, is that it aims to create the inertia, the impetus, let's say, the drive, and more or less to make companies start thinking, ooh, we can start perhaps competing on the sustainability front a bit further, a bit more, to channel what we're doing, to communicate better what we're doing, and to report on it. However, because it's a voluntary code, the European Commission may consider legislative measures in any of the fields if progress is deemed insufficient. Of course, this is a very vague term. What does insufficient mean? And very subjective. What is the timeline? Well, the European Commission started it in January, a co-design period until June, until presently, we're at the last 50-meter dash in a way, where the European Commission has invited EU-level stakeholders like Eurocoop, my organization, and all the other EU-level associations representing the different segments of the supply chain to come together in what was almost weekly meetings in designing this code of conduct. Because in the end of the day, it is the members of these EU-level associations, the companies themselves, that need to endorse the code, sign the code, and design their voluntary commitments. The launch is scheduled for July, which is next month. Our role, Eurocoop's role in this, was to highlight that, well, we have a lot of experience to bring to the table. And this was recognized early on because Eurocoop was invited by the EU Commission to be vice chair and a rapporteur of one of the working groups. The conceptual framework of the aspiration is that the code wants to design commitments in 3 different areas. You see on the left, the objectives of the code: food consumption patterns, so better food consumption patterns, what companies can do internally in their own operations to drive the green transition, and what companies can do through partnerships with other food chain actors, specifically primary producers. This created a framework, a matrix with the 3 sustainability pillars, which you see on top: environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. And the bubbles you see in the middle are the big, let's say, areas the co-design process agreed to for aspirational objectives and aspirational targets, such as food loss and waste, circularity and resource efficiency, climate neutrality, healthy, balanced and sustainable diets, obviously sustainable sourcing. This is where due diligence and not only comes in, sustainable value creation in the food chain through partnerships, and of course, inclusive economic growth, productive employment, and decent work for all, where human rights, child labor are also fitted in. This is, I know it's a big mouthful, I'm not going to go through this. My idea was to put it on the slide so that then Joseph could circulate it and it can be at your disposal. But the aspirational, each aspirational objective you see on the left has aspirational targets. And then within the targets, there are subsections where companies can design precisely their actions. Who does what in this code of conduct? Well, there is room for everybody. EU-level organizations like Eurocoop shall promote the code amongst their members, facilitate company engagement, and continue in the future review, because the code of conduct has to be a living document, because there are many things included in this code which would be solved one way or another by EU legislative measures and EU legislation in the pipeline. So we know that mandatory due diligence legislation is coming soon, and many other. So obviously it needs to be in line with the legislative framework of the European Union. More concretely, the role of companies is to, as I said, design tangible actions, the so-called commitments, which have to be ambitious. How do you define ambitious if it is beyond current legislation? Some examples of how to do that. Well, a company can commit to be carbon neutral or carbon negative, like our member in Finland, SOK, Mariana's own organization, has decided to be by 2025. So you need to slap on some sort of timeline to it, either 2025 or 2030. Some broader aspects, it is recommended 2040 or 2050. then it has to tackle either one of the environmental, social, or health dimensions of sustainability. Certain topics may take priority according to the company's focus. So if you're a supermarket or if you're a producer or a supplier, obviously you're going to have a different type of capacity and different type of focus. Your commitments need to be consistent with international and EU goals and targets. And of course, you have to do, where possible, the company has to do a materiality analysis to see, okay, I have the biggest influence in a specific field, so I will focus my commitments in that field. So companies must, by doing the commitment, by presenting the commitment, they must also present a rationale. What is the motivation behind this commitment? Is it an existing action or a new action which they're developing according to the aspirations, targets, and indicative actions listed in the code? They should identify the KPIs and the baseline year, not earlier than 2015, to measure the progress, because these commitments, they have to be measurable. You cannot just say, I commit myself to greater sustainability and healthy consumption patterns. It's not enough. You need to have more tangible facts there. And you need to report, companies need to report, for the moment, the idea is once a year, and this is going to be published on a public domain. Moving forward, here I have mentioned, this is the second section of my presentation, basically what consumer cooperatives can contribute to it. The text in green is where EuroCoop believes that consumer co-ops can have an added value and a competitive advantage compared to non-co-op retailers and non-co-op businesses. So in the area of healthy and sustainable lifestyles, everyone knows that co-ops do go the extra mile in consumer engagement and campaigning education about food waste, health, and of course physical activity. Product labeling is something we're very proud of, because consumer cooperative retailers shape the labeling of their own products in a more extensive way than non-co-op retailers. Within own operations, we're known for obviously extensive climate action targets, circularity, resource efficiency, packaging, food loss and food waste, tackling food loss and food waste. We specialize in local and short supply chains, and something which everyone calls sustainable corporate governance, I think we call cooperative governance, because of the radical transparency that cooperative businesses, not only consumer cooperatives, utilize. In supply chain partnerships, it was mentioned in the previous speakers that yes, there is multi-stakeholder partnerships and multi-stakeholder discussions. Consumer co-ops as retailers support suppliers, producers, they fight food loss, human rights and due diligence. Now there, it must be mentioned that while we are talking about, yes, we must eradicate human rights and we must exploitation of labor rights and infringement of human rights. And by doing so, the way to go is mandatory due diligence. The question here is, okay, but if, take the example of retailers, you're at the end of the supply chain just before the consumers. And when mandatory due diligence legislation comes in, even though it's in the European Union only, it's going to be EU legislation, is going to have global repercussions, because it's going to oblige EU businesses to do mandatory due diligence across their global supply chains. And the question is, okay, but do they have the capacity to do this? So the question is, shall we guarantee only first-tier suppliers, only the direct suppliers that you have, because maybe there you have more capacity to check, to oblige, to slap on some different, some more stringent criteria on these suppliers? Or would businesses be obliged to guarantee due diligence across the global supply chain for every single product that they sell? That is going to require a lot of partnerships, a lot of capacity as well, especially if that business has to do on-site inspections. I mean, it's going to be very cumbersome and very difficult. Now, do not get me wrong. This does not mean we as consumer cooperatives want to move away from mandatory extensive due diligence. No, we don't. What we call for, though, is that we need a set of enablers. And of course, consumer cooperatives are doing, Mariana's own organizations, and SOK not only, are engaging in multi-stakeholder partnerships, working with suppliers by using blockchain technology, or by signing up to international platforms which specialize in auditing specific sustainability criteria. So all this needs to be taken in the mix. And where consumer cooperatives can contribute a lot as well is in cross-cutting issues like skills, upskilling and reskilling their labor force, creating conditions, inclusive conditions, again, coming to human rights, food safety, training. Examples, if I know, Mariana, I'm wrapping up, feature in, I've again categorized them according to the three sections of the EU Code of Conduct. In Italy, let's say for driving healthy and sustainable lifestyles, the Italian consumer co-ops have been actually drafting for and designing for 40 years now. They've been designing school material for sustainability, and they work with the Ministry of Education for this. In Sweden, just couple months ago, they unleashed their latest innovation called the Sustainability Declaration, which is a digital label which any consumer can access through the co-op mobile app, where they scan the barcode of the product and there is a matrix between 1 and 5. Basically, it tells you the sustainability burden of the product that you're about to buy in 10 different parameters developed by WWF. And this digital label is available for all the 17,000 food items which Co-op in Sweden sell. I mean, it's really groundbreaking. I will put in the chat the links for further information. In climate action, UK announced on the 5th of May, the cooperative group in the UK announced on the 5th of May, their 10-point climate action plan and for becoming carbon neutral by 2040. And the last one, point 10, is something quite groundbreaking, I have to say, because it links the salary, the remuneration, the benefits of the CEO to the success of the climate plan. So talking about sustainable corporate governance and changing attaining changes in the way you do business inside the company, linking the pay of your CEO to the success of your climate plan or sustainability plan is quite groundbreaking, and not a lot of companies are doing. In Sweden, the S Group has developed already a commitment for becoming the country's first carbon negative company by 2025, and they have a big deal campaign of saving 1 million tons of CO2 across their operations. In due diligence and supply in human rights, consumer cooperatives are proud to share some of the examples, like the Co-op Group in the UK have developed the Bright Future campaign. It's actually an initiative, not only a campaign, a Bright Future initiative, where they support the victims of modern slavery in starting and building a new life. In Italy, the Co-op has developed Fair and Just initiative, which aims at tackling gang mastering in fruit and vegetable supply chains using blockchain. And they have actually done, mind you, 13,000 on-site inspections in farms for fruits and veg. In Norway, our member co-founded the Ethical Trading Initiative in Norway, and in Finland, again, SOK, they're collaborating extensively with Amfiori in this area. Concluding, I can say consumer cooperative distinctiveness is that we do our part. What is that? That is taking a holistic approach to sustainability, employing radical transparency about communicating what you're doing. It starts with very uncomfortable conversations about how you can do business more sustainably inside your organization, because you need to identify the risks and start tackling these risks in terms of sustainability. You need to employ partnerships throughout the value chain, and of course, commitments beyond legislation, which for co-ops, it has become a standard practice. Now, policymakers need to do their part by ensuring an enabling environment and a regulatory enablers by, first of all, recognizing the cooperative specificities by guaranteeing a level playing field for all economic models, incentivizing sustainability, innovation, and compliance, which should probably include some sort of penalizing non-compliance, because you need to end the free rider. Because a company, regardless of cooperative or non-cooperative company, that wants to go the extra mile for sustainability, that costs money. And that immediately puts them at an uncompetitive or competitive disadvantage compared to any other company that does not want to comply. the EU, talking about the EU or international policymakers, need to ensure capacity building possibilities like funds, skills, technology. Policymakers on national level need to rearrange their education and academic curricula to include probably environmental education or cooperative education of some sort, sustainability education at a very early age. And talking about Brussels, that is going to have some repercussions on EU trade policy, because at the moment we know that there are certain shortfalls when it comes to sustainability when Brussels does their EU trade policy agreements, free trade agreements with different countries or continents other than Europe. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. And we know, I would like to conclude with the following, that ethical supply chain is a very broad but extremely important discussion. So we as a cooperative movement, the wider cooperative movement, have a part to play in continuing the discussion, in collaborating amongst each other, in driving this agenda at the top of the policymakers' attention. And I look forward to continuing collaborating with you on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todor. Thank you for your inspiring words. I know that this topic of Todor's is a bit far from child labor, but I wanted it to be on this webinar because of it's happening on Brussels just right now, and it's also affecting all the companies globally, not only on EU level, as Todor mentioned. And that's why the topic is important. And we have to be aware of what is going on and what's coming in the near future. But now we are behind the schedule. I'm sorry for that. And we will skip the question and answer part. You may find the answers on the chat box. And now we will move to the second session. And I have the pleasure to invite the ILO team to share with us recommendations and practical tools of cooperatives' role on elimination of child labor. And first on program is the presentation of Andrea Davila. We already know Andrea from our first webinar, but Andrea joined ILO Geneva in 2010, and her main areas of work have been research, design, and implementation of development cooperation projects, and the provision of technical advice on non-discrimination, child labor, and forced labor in different regions. And now she's joined ILO's cooperative unit in 2018 and works now there on the development of capacity building tools, training and development projects in Africa, Arab states, and in Latin America. Andrea has a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations and Business from the Catholic University of Ecuador, and Masters of Arts in Development Studies from the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies, Geneva. And please, Andrea, the floor is now yours. At least I will see the slides of Andrea, but I have no voice.
Sorry, it was my mistake. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning, people who are joining us from Latin America. And thank you, Mariana, for the presentation. Today, I want to talk to you about this new training package that the ILO is launching today, actually, on the role of cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives in eliminating child labor. First of all, just to remind you that since 2009, the ILO has been working with cooperatives towards the elimination of child labor, and my colleagues will be talking about that afterwards. So what was the idea of for us to when we conceived this tool? So this was first of all a collaboration, an internal collaboration between Fundamentals Branch and the Cooperatives Unit of the ILO. And our main idea was to do a practical tool, easy to understand tool that will reflect our conventions, the ILO conventions on the minimum age, on the worst forms of child labor, in a simple language. So people from the cooperatives who are our targets, from the agricultural cooperatives, they could understand the issues of child labor. So the idea of this training package is, first of all, to raise awareness on child labor, help participants to identify instances of child labor, also highlight the role of cooperatives in child labor, in the elimination of child labor, and most importantly, how the collective action could work towards elimination of child labor, and then to help them or to guide them to come up with a set of practical actions that they can do at their level to eliminate child labor. So the tool was already pilot tested in Arusha in 2020. And perhaps, yeah, thank you. So the slide is there. The training package consists of two main guides. So the first one is a guide that is for field trainers, and the second one is a guide that for direct beneficiaries, in this case, the management staff and members of agricultural cooperatives. In the case of the guide for field trainers, the objective is to enable field trainers to organize and deliver this training to direct beneficiaries. Who is the target audience for this guide? Staff of secondary and tertiary cooperatives, managers of well-established cooperatives, staff of government that has the mandate on supporting cooperatives, extension workers, cooperative movement representatives, and trade unions and employees organizations, and any other public or private service provider. The training methodology uses a situated learning approach, which means that participants are all the time participated in exchanging ideas, and it is based on their daily lives or their daily experiences at work. The duration is 3.5 days for the field trainers training. And then on the other hand, the training for management staff and members of agricultural cooperative seeks to raise awareness of them on child labor and guides them on actions to implement activities that will conduct to the elimination of child labor within the cooperative and also the members' operations and in their communities. The target audience are staff members and managers of agricultural cooperatives. The training methodology is the same, and the duration is 2 days. Next, please. Thank you. So briefly, the content of the field trainer's guide. Of course, it starts with some tips on best practices on how to deliver a training, how to prepare the training. Then it will walk participants through identifying what is child labor and the different issues around child labor, the legal framework of child labor. Then what are the consequences of child labor, what are the benefits of eliminating it, and importantly, how cooperatives can help to eliminate child labor. And in this section, of course, the principles and values of cooperatives will be explored, and then identify the links between these principles and values and the elimination of child labor. Then the guide will also help participants to guide direct beneficiaries towards the elaboration of a set of actions or an action plan to eliminate child labor. The training will also consist of mocking sessions, so where participants that are being formed to be field trainers are able to do 1 day of mock training, so they can show their skills, they can show what they have learned, and of course they will get feedback on their participation. As for the guide for management staff and members of agricultural cooperatives, this is of course less complex, because what we thought is we want to do something more practical. We understand also that people work and cannot be away from work for a long time, and especially in the agricultural sector. So again, the guide will help participants identify instances of child labor, again, consequences of child labor, benefits of eliminating it, and how their cooperatives can work to eliminate child labor. this in this guide, there's also a guidance on how they identify instances of child labor and how they will score them in terms of their severity, in terms of their frequency. So this is a process that will help them identify what are the actions that they can actually and practically tackle. So at the end of the training, the idea is that they come with this set of actions that will put in place, identifying responsible people for that, and also responsible or support organizations that can help them in towards this end. Next, please. Yeah. So this is the web, the link to the guides that will be available starting from next week. So you are free to consult the link, and you are free to consult the training guides. And please, next slide. If you have any questions, you can contact us at coop.ilo.org. Thank you, Marina, and over to you.
Thank you, Andrea, for your expertise and contribution, and thank you, ILO, for this concrete tool for cooperatives that will certainly help us in the future. I now invite Edgar Aguilar, who comes from the ILO Regional Office for Africa, which is based in Cote d'Ivoire. He holds a position of Social Finance Officer with the focal point for market development in Africa. He's also providing technical support to the Accel Africa project on financial innovation, working on the intersection between financial inclusion and the realization of fundamentals and principles right at work. Edgar has several years of experience about developing financial services for smallholder farmers and related value chain actors, as well as risk management solutions for agricultural value chains. So this will be another type of presentation, but Edgar will give us now a picture of the Accel Africa project. Please, Edgar, I will pass now the floor to you.
Thank you, Mariana, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody. I will share my screen. Hope it works. Yes. Okay. So
yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I think, I mean, my presentation will mainly focus on how the tool that was presented by Andrea fits under the frame of a child labor project. So the Accel Africa project, which stands for Accelerating Action for the Elimination of Child Labor in Supply Chains in Africa, has a specific component that looks to support cooperative organizations to address the root causes of child labor within an integrated area-based approach. Before going or describing what and how we are supporting cooperatives organizations, I would like to frame a bit and to describe the main elements of this Accel Africa project. So the Accel Africa project is a regional project funded by the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands and goes from 2019 until the end of 2022. The main goal is to accelerate the elimination of child labor in Africa through targeted actions in selected supply chains. The project covers 6 countries in 5 supply chains, namely cocoa and gold mining in Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, and Nigeria, cotton, including the garment industry in Egypt, and tea and coffee in Malawi and Uganda. The project was designed based on a long track experience of the ILO in the field of child labor elimination. The growing evidence and the specific review of policies and programs conducted by the ILO in 2018 showed that progress relies centrally on an active government policy response. I think during the webinar today, we've been saying that child labor is a very complex problem. And we also acknowledge that standalone interventions have shown positive results in very specific locations. But in order to have a national impact and to see real change at the national level, there is an active role of the government that needs to be played by them. So based on this growing evidence, the project is working in two main outcomes. The first one focuses to strengthen and improve the policy and legal institutional frameworks, enabling the environment on how this issue can be tackled at a root level. So this is done by generating knowledge and data, advocating child labor issues, and mainstreaming it into cross-sectoral policies, building the capacities of national stakeholders, including employers and workers' organizations, and promoting the use of social dialogue as an instrument to convene private and public actors to take action in a more coordinated way. The second outcome looks mainly to provide direct support to end beneficiaries, which are the private sector, I mean, companies working in these selected supply chains. Direct support provided also to adults, women and men, part of members of cooperatives, organizations, and other associations, and of course also direct support to children. The idea under this outcome, it is to test and implement innovative and evidence-based solutions that should be at some extent institutionalized, so then they are anchored at a national level and can influence the policy agenda to have a proper active response. The project follows a supply chain approach in order to bring actors together to accelerate action against child labor and hence pursue a common agenda. This approach allows us to convene all actors from the supply chain, and it's used as an entry point in the connections with the community level.
Sorry, Edgar, are you showing the slides by yourself? Because
yes.
Now we have slide number 1.
You're still in number 1? Okay, yes. I am in slide number 7. It's not working then? You're still
okay, but we will share the slides anyway, but now it's...
Now it is in the good one? Yes.
No, it's not. But please continue and we will share the slides then afterwards because everyone will get them anyway.
Oh, okay. Very sorry about that. Well, I have in front of me the right slide. So I was mentioning these two-level approaches, the supply chain one, and then also the combination with an integrated area-based approach, which looks to implement interventions in very specific geographical locations with the aim of addressing all forms of child labor. Hence, every child and every risk of violation of child rights are addressed. This means that the project is not only focusing on cleaning or eliminating child labor within one alone supply chain, but also looking to prevent how child labor would be found in other sectors or activities within the same community. So the integrated area-based approach allows us to prevent and eliminate child labor not only at one supply chain, but at all the sectoral levels within one community. This is where like the combination of these both approaches help us to give an active role to cooperatives as part of the supply chain to be able to deliver services to their members in partnership with other supply chain actors, but also to strengthen the coordination to the support provided to the community level. As we mentioned, one of the other activities of the project is also to support communities setting up child labor monitoring systems. So the coordination of action between the supply chain and the community level are strongly strengthened with this approach. We are also looking with the supply chain approach and the distribution and providing services to members through the supply chain approach to facilitate innovative partnerships with public and private service providers who have the expertise to design and develop innovative services that can be delivered through the chain. This is where cooperatives play an important role, being the aggregator and representing the needs of their members, hence establishing these partnerships in the field. You are still not following the slides, or no?
No, Patrick.
Oh, okay.
No, Edgar, sorry.
Well, now I think I will go.
Maybe you will conclude, or?
Yes, I mean, maybe just to continue. I mean, how this is concretely now, after I explained the frame and the approach of the project, what we are doing or providing support to cooperatives organizations. But I don't only want to say what we're doing, but also the process we undertook to do this and to anchor an intervention model at a national level that would be then later replicated and not only address one sector, but also other sectors, and provide support not only to selected cooperatives, but also at national level. So the implementation model that we have designed and are about to test was built based on a number of assessments and consultations. And first of all, the situation of cooperatives within the supply chain was assessed to understand the relationships between cooperatives and other supply chain actors like buyers, exporters, certifiers, and private and public service providers. We also assessed the capacities of cooperatives to be viable enterprises, and also to see what would be the role they can play in the elimination of child labor. We also reviewed the existing cooperatives capacity building programs to assess the type of support cooperatives were already receiving, and to assess whether or not child labor issues were integrated into those programs. This assessment allowed us to identify active partners in the field who were already providing support to cooperatives. The second level was to properly design the implementation model based on the assessments and the consultations. We first identified and selected a national supporting organization that would be the one who will anchor the solution at the national level and provide and implement the solutions in the ground. We also selected a number of limited cooperatives based on the capacities assessments to see with which ones we could test this model, and to see with which ones we will provide the right tools they need to overcome their challenges. This is how then we ended adapting the training package that was shared by Andrea to the specific context of each country where we are intervening, and to the specific context of each supply chain. Then we also organized a number of training of trainers, which was already presented by Andrea, who are members or staff from supporting of organizations, but also service providers that are collaborating and working with those selected cooperatives. The implementation level of the work was, first of all, to build the capacities of those cooperatives, applying a number of ILO tools depending on the needs of the cooperatives selected. Sorry. And then also one of those tools was, of course, the tool presented by Andrea. The main outcome of this capacity building is to develop concrete action plans on how cooperatives can support their members. A second part of the implementation phase consisted in providing services to their members only with those cooperatives that were mature enough to test these service delivery models. and also to develop sustainable business models that can last after the project completion. Under these components, we provide a mentorship program to cooperatives to follow up on their delivery of services to their members and to see if they are responding or not to the needs of the members. We also support the facilitation of new partnerships between cooperatives, organizations, and the identified service providers, either private or public, and then testing this model in order to build sustainable business models that can support the work of the cooperatives. I wanted to conclude this presentation just by giving you the example of the work done in Côte d'Ivoire in the cocoa supply chain, where we engaged with a number of stakeholders from the cocoa supply chain, but also from the child labor, stakeholders working to eliminate child labor. Then we selected a proper implementing partner, which is a public agency supporting not only cooperatives in cocoa supply chain, but mainly in the whole agriculture sector, selecting a number of cooperatives and their partners who are the buyers that are already having commercial relationships with our selected cooperatives. And then in terms of the specific services delivered to members, we are testing the delivery of financial services in partnership with the National Financial Inclusion Agency, hosted by Ministry of Economy and Finance, and then also providing a health insurance, a social protection scheme developed by the Ministry of Social Protection in Côte d'Ivoire. So this is, a concrete example on what we are doing in Côte d'Ivoire. We are getting through the same process in all the other countries, trying to test this to, as I'm saying in like a few words to conclude, it is to test these business models so then cooperatives can keep providing services to their members, and also implementing partners anchor the solution at the national level, so then not only our selected cooperatives can benefit, but also other cooperatives, and not only cooperatives from cocoa supply chain, but also from other sectors. So I think that's what I had planned to present you today. Thanks to all of you, and very sorry for these tech problems.
Thank you, Edgar. And I am so sorry about the overtime, but now I have the pleasure to invite Philip van Hinegem and Tarun Bhargava, who are bringing us now the closing remarks. Philip is the director of the Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work branch of the ILO Geneva Governance and Tripartism Department. The branch promotes policy development, carries out research, and provides technical advisory services on child labor, forced labor, non-discrimination, and freedom of association and collective bargaining. Philip, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marjana, for this introduction. But first of all, it's a real pleasure to be in your webinar and to have invited me. And I really mean it. As some of you might know, I worked quite extensively in the past on cooperative development, as I was a bit more than 10 years ago, the CTA, the chief technical advisor of a large program in Africa called COPE Africa. So I know we are a bit behind schedule, so I will, in my closing remark, do 3 remarks, basically. The first one is to say and to reiterate the fact that Edgar and Andrea brilliantly also mentioned what the ILO is doing, but to reiterate that the ILO is extremely and fully committed to work with the cooperative movement to end child labor. Actually, our 2 branches in the ILO, which is COPE and Fundamentals, as it was explained, are already collaborating. And as I was myself involved in supporting the cooperative movement in Africa for quite some time in 2009, we will keep working extremely hard to end child labor in grassroots organization and with the support of the cooperative movement. Edgar mentioned the role that ACCEL program, which is a large multi-donor, multi-country program, is doing in supply chain, will keep working with the cooperative movement. And we expect also that Apex organization can mainstream the work and upscale the work that we are doing within those projects to be much more institutionalized. But let me, in this first message, say that at the ILO level, we should work more closely with you on 3 different levels. First one, the prevention and elimination of child labor among the cooperative members and their surrounding communities. Secondly, and many speakers have said, the cooperative movement has a very strong role in empowering economically the producer. That's the second level of intervention. And thirdly, it was mentioned also in one of the presentation, the role of protection that a cooperative have for their members and the community through the producer organization, the consumer cooperative, or the financial cooperative. So those 3 levels of prevention, economic empowerment, and protection are absolutely key to address jointly. My second message is to say that we are probably today at a turning point in the fight against child labor. As you might know, the ILO and UNICEF will release, I heard Bruno mentioning the figures of 152 million children in child labor. That was the statistics indeed from 2016. Tomorrow we will release the new figures. And although obviously I'm not authorized to release today, one day before the new figures, the new global estimate, the situation is really worrying. And that will need a very strong commitment from all stakeholders, especially now that the world is facing a severe economic, social crisis with COVID-19. So the second message is we need to be faster, stronger, and really all committed from the state to the private sector and community-based organization, including cooperative, in the fight against child labor for the future of our generation. And cooperative here, and it was also mentioned, can really have a extremely important role to play. They can ensure that their business operation are free of child labor in the supply chain. They can, it was mentioned several times, do campaign, awareness raising campaign. They can empower the adults in indeed having a better living. They can implement and mainstream the training programs thanks to the tool that we develop, etc., etc. So my second message is we do need to do much more if we want to achieve SDG 8.7, and that's the responsibility of everyone. And my third and last message is what at international level the ICA is already doing. As you know, 2021 has been declared by the United Nations as the International Year Against Child Labor. And we called as ILO and the rest of the community to do pledges. And ICA has done a strong pledge to conduct awareness raising campaign towards the elimination of child labor. And we saw the series of projects through the case study that the cooperative movement is doing. At the international level, what the ILO has done with the rest of the community and partners is to set up what we call the Alliance 8.7 to reach by 2025 the elimination of child labor. It's really challenging nowadays, as I mentioned, but it is possible if we join forces. Today, the Alliance 8.7 count around 240 partners worldwide, and we have already a series of what we call pathfinder countries who have joined the movement. And I here call the ICA and all your members to join the Alliance, to be a partner of the Alliance 8.7, and to implement indeed the pledge that you have done. And one last message, and a call also is, as you will have by December your international congress, maybe we can work together and have specific commitments and session around the idea of how do we join hands during that Congress to fight against child labor jointly. And cooperative movement, as I said initially, is really important. because you are working, you are very close to the community, especially if we look at the figures that will be released tomorrow, but it was already the case in past years. The presence of child labor is mostly in some of key sector, in particular in agriculture, and cooperative are the actor who worked in very closely with farmer producers, be in the production, commercialization, or financing. So this is my three major messages I wanted to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you for your kind words. And we do share with you the challenges. And we are very happy to be with you in the near future as well and do cooperation with you. So thank you very much for taking part in our event, and thank you for the ILO's collaboration in this event. We really do appreciate it. Thank you, Philip. And lastly, I want to invite now Tarun Bhargava. Tarun is the chair of ICETT think tank, and he will give us now the final remarks. Tarun Bhargava serves as Joint General Manager at Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative IFCO, and being in charge of the Sustainable Cooperative Development Team. Tarun is also an executive member of the ICAO sectoral organization of the ICA. And his portfolio involves working with 36,000 member cooperative societies in the agricultural sector in India for building stronger agricultural cooperatives. And Tarun, please, I will pass now the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Mariana. And at the outset, on behalf of ICETT, that is International Cooperative Entrepreneurship Think Tank, I'd like to thank all the participants, all the eminent dignitaries and personalities from across the globe who have really given their time today. And I'm really very happy to see so much people participating in this event. And this really enforces the significance of cooperatives in the arena where we are working today in the socio-economic transformation of the world. First of all, thank you very much, Mariana. It was an excellent event. I've been seeing the chat box with so many comments coming from people, their engagement, their involvement in all the presentations. And thanks to all the speakers who had taken out their time to be here with us, especially from ILO. And one of our very last speakers, Mr. Philip Van Huygen. And thank you very much that ILO is working so cohesively with ICA and ICETT. I'd like to just address the participants here, the audience here, that ICETT is dedicated to strengthen the cooperative movement, provide strategic impetus to the entrepreneurship activities by the co-ops across the globe. And the conversations which we had today were really very interesting, and we will like to implement the recommendations of the speakers and try to make them reach all the cooperatives across the globe who are all the ICA members. And this event today was one of the last in the series of the 3 webinars organized by ICETT, the first one on the 1st of June, the second on the 3rd of June, and the last one today. And they are really addressing the very core of the issues which are like before us, before the world. The first one, the future of work, we had addressed on 1st of June, then on 3rd, the sustainable, having a environment just future. And then today we had the human rights and value chains. And all this will lead to like collating the ideas, articulating the ideas of all the speakers we had during these webinars as we look forward to the roadmap to reach the 1st to 3rd December International World Cooperative Congress being organized by ICETT in Seoul, Korea. And I would like to just inform all the participants here that this is just the beginning of what ICETT is doing, and all are free to join this group of ICETT, and we have been trying to reach all the regions, the 4 regions of ICETT: Africa, Asia, Pacific, Americas, and Europe. And we are also trying the different sectors, cooperators, to join the ICETT group so that we can have a better impact on the lives of the people who are working in cooperatives. Once again, this really reinforces the cooperative identity edge and the cooperative edge which it provides to the businesses in changing the lives of millions of people across the globe. And on this occasion, I'd like to thank Bruno Rollins and the ICETT team, who have really worked hard, and they have really engaged. They were able to engage, I think, maybe 300 to 400 people across the globe, across the continents. And today also we are seeing people from Asia, Americas, Europe, and Africa, all who are in different time zones. They are together today to be witness of this event. I'd like to thank and really congratulate Mariana for organizing such a wonderful event, which is an eye-opener and addressing the issue of child labor across the globe, and especially in the cooperatives where we are dedicated, and definitely we'd like to take this forward with ILO. And as suggested by Philip, we can have a pledge, and Bruno can work on this along with the team. And thank you very much to all of you, and best of luck. Stay safe and stay healthy. God bless.
Thank you, Tarun, for your remarks. And I also want to thank you all on behalf of me and on behalf of the ICETT working group for participating in our event and making it come true. And I am so sorry about the overtime, but my apologies for that. We hope that you will have time to give us feedback, and we will welcome you to our events in the future as well. And you all will get the presentations, and this event was recorded, as you maybe remember. So you can follow it afterwards as well. So thank you all, and all the best to you. Take care.
Muy bien. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gracias a todos. Desde Argentina, un abrazo.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Igualmente. Many thanks.
Many thanks from Rome. Hi, everybody. Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao, Bruno. Ciao, todo el mundo. Mariana, tutti. Ciao. Tarun. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao, Carlos. Nice to see you.
Hello, bye from Pakistan.
Thank you, Nasir. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Adios para todos. Ciao a tutti. Ci vediamo. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.